Continuing on from examples 13 and 14, example 15. How many grams of excess reactant are present? Excess reactant. Remember we established from our work that this was the limiting reactant. Therefore, by default, the other reactant is my excess reactant. So we're going to do a stoichiometric grid because everything must come from the limiting reactant. So we're going to start with our limiting reactant and we're going to go to the excess reactant. This is my excess reactant. So I'm going to do a grid that allows me to go from my limiting reactant to my excess reactant. Take a moment to do that. So you're going from grams of iron sulfate, 3645 grams of iron sulfate, and you're going to go to grams of chromium borate from my limiting to my excess because it asks about how many grams of excess reactant are present. Please pause the video and calculate that. You should have gotten 17.83. Now we're going to SU. Start minus used equals excess. SU. Start minus used equals excess. Very important point, a very important thing to point out right now. When I do a stoichiometric calculation, this is true and has been true the whole time. This is my first time pointing it out to you though. So whenever you do a stoichiometric calculation, you either figure out how much of the reactants you've used up, so how much of this or this I use, or how much product you produce. So how much of this do I use if it's a reactant, how much do I make if it's a product? One more time. Every stoichiometric calculation tells us how much reactant we use or how much product we make. So we need to take our start minus used equal excess. When we do this stoichiometric grid, we figured out a reactant. Therefore, because it's a reactant, we know how much we use. So the 17.83 is how much we use. We know how much we started with. We're going to go back to the start problem 13 and look at how much of the same chemical, because everything the SU must be of the same chemical. Okay, we're going to look at how much of this chemical, what chemical? Chromium borate we started with. Okay, back looking at problem 13 as we started with 22.45 grams of chromium borate. So we're going to take that start and we're going to plug it in here. 22.48 grams of iron borate, that's our start. We established that from the beginning of the problem. We calculated how much we use, because remember stoichiometry tells us how much of this we use, one of these two, either of these two, and how much of this we make. So we're going to take 22.45 minus 17.83 and we get 4.62 grams of chromium borate in excess. That concludes our notes for this portion of our unit.